information of individuals, as this would infringe the data protection rights of that individual. And may I please ask everyone to mute their microphones when not speaking? That I think applies to the councillors, not you members of the public. You haven't got microphones, so I think you don't have to worry about that particular point. So item 1 on the agenda for the evening is apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Councillor Sajid and North. I don't believe that anybody else is absent, so we can move on from there. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Firstly, do any members have disclosable pecuniary interest in any item? There are none. So item B is any disclosable non-pecuniary interest in any item on the agenda. Yeah. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I'm a member of the gardening group. It's the community garden that's asked for some money on the grants. So I'll talk about it, but I won't vote on it.
Thank you. Right, Chairman's announcements. I have none. Right, this is the moment I think a lot of you have been waiting for, and this is the public open session. This is in connection with items on the agenda. I think we all know what you're here for this evening, and I think a lot of you do want to speak. It would be very helpful, I think, looking at the numbers here, if there's more than one from one group, if you could select one spokesman, I think that would be very helpful. I can't necessarily restrict you totally to that, but I think it would be helpful for the meeting. And as mentioned earlier, you would each have 3 minutes. And I'm inclined to think if I may start on the left of the room and go around, that may be the easiest way of dealing it. So if you'd signify if you want to speak or pass on. So Carol, that's whistle. This is the time for you to say what you want to say. Could you use the microphone if that's possible? Thank you very much. Do you wish to speak? If you've moved down the line there, if you could go up to the microphone, if you do wish to speak.
And bearing in mind that we're all thinking of the environment, we have had to put in a scheme which will be compatible with the phase 2, which will be to look at more green solutions. The church obviously has an active congregation, being the only Anglican church in the town, but is also a community venue hosting concerts, the civic service, and generally being there for the people of Biggleswade for times in their life, christenings, marriages and weddings and funerals. So that's all I wish to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Butcher. Next, please.
I'm Hazel Clark. I'm here on behalf of Biggleswade Community Carnival. Over the last few years, obviously, the carnival has been in danger of actually collapsing completely. The entire committee actually stepped down about 4 years ago and we took over. But with that, we identified that there was quite a lot of red tape that previous committees were not following. So in terms of security, road closure, things like that, all of these come with a cost. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that have been sponsoring or supporting the carnival in previous years by donating their hall for free or participating in events are actually struggling themselves financially. So we're obviously proposing that with the grant that will help to obviously support actually fund those items in the actual carnival itself, which then brings in people into the town centre for actual carnival day, the duck race, engages the elderly community for some of the more sort of quieter events that they've asked for, engages the younger community with the new pool parties, kids discos, and actually helps.
Next, please. Thank you very much. Next, please. Thank you very much. Next, please. Thank you very much. Next, please.
My name is Sharon Mayer from the Mood Constellation Scheme. We've been going as a charity since
Moving on to the, I think you were with that lady, yes. Moving on to the other side of the room. Thank you. Just members, I note that we meant to have 15 minutes for the public, but I propose letting them continue so everybody has their say. So next, please. Thank you. Next, please. Thank you very much. And I think finally, thank you very much. Thank you to the public. That excellent presentations from you all, very interesting and thought-provoking. So I'm sure we'll be taking that on board later. But I'll now take the council back into the formal meeting. The next item on the agenda is in fact an invited speaker. We don't have any invited speakers apart from, of course, from your good selves who've spoken. So item 6, members' questions, please. No questions, so thank you. The next item is to receive the minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee meeting held on the Tuesday, the 18th of July. This is for accuracy only, so we'll go through it. Members, page 5 for accuracy, page 6, page 7, page 8, and page 9. Is it your wish that I sign these as a true and correct record of the meeting? I shall now do so. Thank you. Oh, matters arise. Now, having signed them, I've got to remember there's matters arising. So, going back now, page 5, page 6, page 7. Councillor Russell.
There's an item, 4th paragraph on page 7. Members queried the emerging cost of the councillor training and indicated that in 4 years' time, maybe this could be budgeted. I'd like to suggest that councillors' training should be budgeted every year. There are quite a few training courses available through the Bedfordshire Association and through NALC, and members should have access to that because it covers a lot of aspects of our role in the council. So could I ask that for next year's budget, there is an item for councillor training? And if I could go on, Chairman, at the bottom of that item, members resolved to accept the recommendation to approve the 4 requested environments. Might I suggest that in minutes, those 4 items should be listed, because otherwise you can't see what has been approved unless you go back to the agenda.
No, that makes perfect sense. So yes, I think officers will take that on board for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So on page 7, on the 3rd paragraph down, so it talks about the IT maintenance agreement, and the last sentence is, therefore officers will come back to the committee with recommendations in a detailed report. Now, this is mentioned in item 9B, but very briefly. So I wonder when we can expect the detail that promises.
Mr. Youngs.
Sorry, I'm having trouble recalling the item.
Well, I don't know the detail because we haven't had it yet. So it was just the increase in that was needed for the IT budget and the debate around that last time around. And yeah, as promised in that last sentence.
And actually, I don't think that it was an increase. It was 50,000 last year, and then we reduced it down to 47. But actually then realised that we do need 50,000.
I think that officers need to go back and possibly update the committee, not necessarily in a meeting, as to clarification of that, because yes, I can remember the fact that there seems to have been a budgeting glitch, if I can put it in those terms, and to make sure that we don't repeat the glitch in the next year's budget. And I think, but if Mr. Youngs can take that back and just revert to us if necessary, just by an email to the committee.
Yeah. So under what is it? It's 10F, the risk management update report, the 2nd paragraph. So it's talking about mitigating ICT security risks by means of training for staff and members. So is that progressing, and can we expect some member training as well?
Mr. Youngs.
Yes, very much that will be happening. We hope over the next month.
Okay. Thank you.
I think if we can just note that it's hope this should be for the next month, because it's a very serious issue now, cyber fraud.
Under the same item, risk management, about the public realm fleet, its age and condition. The council has set aside funds sufficient for repairs and maintenance. I have an issue about what we're going to put in next year's budget, because it's not just repairs and maintenance, it's going to be replacement. So I'm expecting to see a proper programme of replacement of the very aged vehicles we've got in some cases.
Thank you for those comments. I would imagine that there'll be a report going to possibly even PLOS as the group that will be using, it has most of those vehicles under it, and certainly for the budgeting process we must have some detail on this so that we budget properly for this into the future and we do not have unexpected rises, which could be the case otherwise. Thank you for that. And page 9. Page 9. Right, we now move on to item 9A on the agenda, the grant applications. Now, members will all read the report from Mr. Youngs on this, and the observations with regards to the quantity of applications, the amounts being requested, our budget, and the fact that there will be a second tranche in forthcoming. We've been fortunate tonight to have had many members of many different groups here giving a very useful presentation. But I do know that some members have had difficulty actually being able to access this, and just as a highlight, I had the pleasure of being given the paperwork for this, and apart from the fact it gave me a hernia, it's quite detailed reading, and there are so many different variables on this, and I've tried to speak to all members of this committee as well as officers in the last 3 days, because I don't think we can necessarily do justice to the applicants and ourselves in just making an immediate decision at short notice. I think that subject to your views, but I've been through this. I'm not sure everybody will have had the opportunity because of other commitments, and I have had a feeling from general discussion that members might prefer to defer this for a separate meeting when we can consider it with nothing else on the agenda other than purely this, to make sure we get it right, and so that we can do a true comparison of all the implications, because you've got a variety of organisations. Some are very small local voluntary organisations, others are part of national organisations, some have been around for a number of years, some are fairly new. And I think we owe it to the public of Biggleswade and all the applicants to give this due consideration. I personally feel that we wouldn't be doing it justice tonight, but members, I'm open to your comments.
Okay. So I didn't realise I had my microphone on. Okay, yeah, I think that's the best way forward. The budget is that we got for this is £21,000, but that covers 2 tranches, and we've only got one that's come in yet. So in effect, we've got about half of that. The applications come to, what is it? It's 37,000 and something. So if my arithmetic is correct, that's an extra. It's 75% extra to the budget that we've got, and that's just for the first tranche. So it's going to be very, very difficult to share it out. It's just going to be pretty impossible. There's going to be lots of discussion about it, I think. We've heard if I could, I would give everybody who spoke tonight the grant that they were asking for. But that would come to so much money that we just haven't got in the budget. So we have to carefully consider each one. We have to come up with some sort of means of deciding the prioritizing some over others, and that's going to take a lot of discussion and debate, I'm sure. So I think leaving it to deferring it to another meeting, as you suggest, is the right approach.
I'll seek a motion after other members have had an opportunity to comment. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, just conscious not wanting to duplicate what's been said already, but I think it's important the fact that all members need to have had access to the information, because without that it potentially doesn't give you the information that you need. We have a sort of a summary which gives what the detail, the amounts that people are asking for, and quite rightly I think we should give ourselves an opportunity to discuss it, consider it in enough detail to do each of the organisations justice and make sure that we are allocating it effectively. So that's really a bit of duplication.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to comment at this stage, or would some member like to make a comment? If we wish to defer, then I'll ask Mr. Youngs to come in with suggestions as to an alternative date to deal with this, because I think we need to set a date tonight, if that's at all possible. Could I have a proposal, please? Councillor Allbone.
Yeah, I move that this is deferred to a future meeting.
Is that seconded, please? Any further comment? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, Mr. Youngs, we did have a brief discussion about possible dates for this. Could you perhaps let the committee give your ideas of availability, taking into account the other commitments of the council and committees?
So the next two dates that are available on a Tuesday are next Tuesday and the 24th of October, because we've then got 3 other committee meetings, but the 24th is available.
Members, your observations, please.
If I may. I'm torn on this one because it would be the straightforward thing to do would be to say next Tuesday, as it does allow it. It's a free Tuesday. What I'm concerned about is, does that give us sufficient time to be able to review the documentation, make sure we've considered, make sure we've got a process in place to review it. But I'm also concerned about going to the 24th of October, which is then in terms of the timeliness. So that's not really helping, I guess. But I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everybody that we would almost like to have something in between. So, and I would like to have something in between, but that doesn't fit in with a Tuesday. So I'm not sure. I'm just going to park it there for now. I might wait to see what other people have got thoughts on, but I'm not sure next week is going to give us enough time necessarily, but other members may feel differently.
Councillor Agnew.
It was the microphone that didn't work. My only extra comment would be that through the nature of some of the applications, we might have the time limitations, like, for example, the events that are related to Christmas activities. So this is the only thing that we need to be mindful of. But I agree that probably pushing it to October is a bit too late.
Thank you, members. Further comment, please. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important that before we get to having a date, we agree what the consistent criteria is for assessing each of these, to give everybody the most opportunity to get the best amount of funding that they can. So I think we have to have that in place before we can actually talk about dates. Otherwise, we're going to try and force ourselves into something that we're not going to deliver.
I certainly think we need to have a criteria, but we've got to look at practicalities.
Thank you. In some ways, it's a wonderful problem to have, isn't it? To have so many organisations represented tonight, and I think more applications than we've had before. I think you're right that we need a framework to assess the applications objectively, perhaps some sort of scoring criteria, and then we could make a more objective decision, I think. I think there is some urgency because obviously we publish the schedule and we shouldn't delay unnecessarily, but I think the 24th of October sounds achievable. So I'd be happy to propose that.
Thank you. I've had a proposal that it be deferred to the 24th of October. Is that seconded by anybody? Do any other members wish to speak at this stage, please?
Could I? What I'd like to think is, and I hate to use the word working group or something of that nature, because that's it always brings out a cold sweat. But I think it's one of those. This is one of the areas where I think members need to have a sort of an idea of how we're going to score it, and if we can come up with some mechanism that's. I think trying to discuss that in public is going to be quite challenging to come up with a framework. So somehow, not necessarily all members of the committee, maybe 3 or 4 members that come together to come up with a framework that would work pending a future meeting. Chairman, perhaps that might be the way forward. So that would be in addition to a proposal, I think.
I think that would be a separate issue, because certainly I think we need to create something of that nature. And I'll throw a few ideas out. If we agree the deferral to the 24th of October, if everybody's happy to take that vote now, and then we'll discuss the process so that we actually have a considered and appropriate method of determination rather than just a finger in the air. So if there's no further discussion on the date of deferral, I believe the proposal was for a meeting to take place on the 24th of October. All those in favour, could you please show? Against? Abstentions? There's one abstention, but that's carried. Right. I think it does make sense to have a set of criteria matrix in effect. I've already thought of various things such as size of organisation, where they're based, the state of their accounts and things like that. But I think that the idea is that a group of us meet informally to have a discussion on the matrix so that we can then work out how we're going to achieve that. And I think that should be happening in the future, not just for now, so that we actually set up a base for determination. And there'll be one other point I'll raise on tranches after we've had a brief discussion. So who would be interested in creating the matrix? I think creating a formula for discussion. So I think everybody is interested. I think what we need to do is to arrange an informal meeting sooner rather than later to do so. Councillor Russell.
I think we're in a different situation to what we've been in previous years because of the number of applications. And I'm also conscious that we've got a lot more applications over the £2,000 mark, which has been the limit that we've been able to give before. We've had the odd one like the community agent, which council decides separately. And I'm wondering whether we need to think about this when we do the budget next year, because we can set the amount. We usually take it as a percentage, but we can set the amount. And I think we need to not only think about how we can assess grants fairly, but we need to think about whether we can support community organisations more in future years.
I take the point there, but I think that needs to be a separate item for the next F&GP agenda when we're looking at the budgeting process, not for today, but I do take the point. Councillor Allbone.
Yeah, so the 26th of September, which is next Tuesday, was offered previously. Is that a suitable date to get together and talk about criteria?
Members, what do you think? I know Tuesday is a day that I give up on the rest of life for Tuesdays for the town council. So I think that if we could meet next Tuesday, same time, same place, but on an informal basis. Right. Just one other issue that I think we need to consider at some stage with regards to our timescale on grants, because our next date for expiry is the 31st of December on a historical basis with a view to dealing with grants in the January meeting, which is of course the meeting where this committee considers the precept. My view is that that is not going to be feasible, particularly if we have a number of applications we've had tonight. It's not on the agenda, but I think if we could ask the officers to give a report to possibly moving the dates for the limitation of applications to say the 31st of January and for the matter to be considered at the March meeting, I think that would be a more sensible and practical way. It'll still be within the year, but it will spread the determination better, and it will avoid getting into a very awkward period of the year with the precept and trying to determine this, because as we've seen from today, I don't think we could deal with the precept and do it justice and the application. So I've asked the officers, and the officers have indicated that they will put a report to council on that basis.
Duncan.
Councillor Barrett.
Just one question. Could I also ask, if we are going to meet next Tuesday, that the grants policy that we actually have already, that everyone gets an opportunity to look at that and read it before we meet that meeting, because it does cover quite a lot of the criteria that we should be using.
Thank you very much. Perhaps that could be circulated to members as a separate attachment when and we'll discuss the practicalities of arranging that meeting after tonight. Any further comments, please, for this on this particular item on the agenda? Well, thank you very much for your determination. I hope the members of the public who've taken the time and trouble to come here this evening and presented their case very ably will appreciate the reasons why we're not rushing into making a decision tonight. We want to make sure we get it right and to be fair for everybody. And as I think you've already heard, suggestions are being made looking towards future years. But for this year, we have a budget that, as everybody has a budget, has got to comply with. So I hope you appreciate the reasons why this committee's made that decision. But thank you once again for coming. Now, you're welcome to stay if you wish, but I think we'll understand if you've got other things to do. And thank you so much for coming, and I hope you found the meeting constructive. Right, members, we've still got quite a bit on the agenda tonight, and I appreciate that we would all like to retire at a sensible time this evening. The next item on the agenda is item 10B, finance review update. I'm sure all members have had the opportunity to read and have read the agendas up to date, so I don't want to necessarily go through reports or have Mr. Youngs give us a verbatim report on the reports, but I'm going to ask members to make their observations first of all, and then bring Mr. Youngs in, having had members' observations rather than reverse, if everyone's happy with that. So first of all, members' questions and comments, please. Councillor Allman.
I've got two. On number one, the new boiler for the Orchard Centre. I appreciate this is probably very urgent, but has any consideration been given to a means of heating the Orchard Centre which isn't reliant on gas? So, like for instance, a heat pump. Yeah, I realise that this would be more expensive, but in the long run, the running costs might be very much reduced. So I just wondered if there's been any kind of investigation about non-gas means of heating the place.
I will ask Mr. Youngs to answer that question, please.
I don't believe so. So I will have a discussion with the place shaping manager and the head of governance. And ask if that can be considered.
Thank you. And I think the relevant comment on that is the fact that we have got to be conscious of targets that we're being set governmentally, and the wrong type of boiler at this stage could actually lead to issues in the future. But so thank you for raising that point.
Okay. I do have a second point, if that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so again on boilers, so the one in the old courthouse, so we've got two and one is exhibiting signs of distress, I think. So my question is, so if that boiler actually stopped functioning completely, what is the impact of that?
I guess that some of us would get quite cold. Probably have to work at home. I believe that the other one actually can still heat the building. So that's probably why we would suggest it more as a growth item for next year.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you. Yeah, I think my understanding is one is a backup for the other. I don't really like the terminology growth, because growth implies it's an ongoing cost, whereas this feels like an exceptional cost that you would expect to pay once, but not expect to see it folded into the budget. So I would prefer not to use terms like growth for one-off non-budgeted costs if possible. I guess the main point I wanted to make is cheapest isn't always best. And I know the Orchard Centre isn't that old, and it seems that the boilers failed perhaps quite prematurely. So the quote we have for £3,500, are we confident that we're not just getting the cheapest boiler, but one that's actually going to last for 15, 20 years?
I'm not confident, no, and certainly it's a cheaper quote considerably than some of the other quotes. So I think that's a very valid point that we need to take forward.
So if I could come back on that, I appreciate the urgency, but without sight of the quote, I'm not comfortable without knowing a little bit more, you know, whether there's a consultant who's looked at the quotes to compare the alternatives, but it may be one is substantially more durable than the other, and I think that needs to be taken into account.
Just an observation there, this is for the next year budget. The other thing is Councillor Russell's already raised the issue with regard to vehicles and the fact that they wear out over a period of time. I do think that we should be looking as a council at actually having a budget to take into account the fact that there will be natural depreciation, if nothing else. And I don't think it is growth, it's being able to fund the purchase, replacement and repair over a period of time, and everything will wear out at some stage. So I think that needs to be taken into account, but we're not actually being asked to make a decision, as I understand it, for this year. It is more, I think, that officers need to go away and reflect on how they deal with it for the budgeting process for next year and in future years. Councillor Barrett.
Just on the same point, coming from a sort of housing association background, you take a very proactive approach to boilers and other sorts of things in maintenance, and you have a set time for certain types of products. So you would be able to budget in that way. You would know that in 5 years, you would have a good review of all the different estate, if I can call it that. And then you would have a much better program of budgeting and doing it that way, rather than waiting for it to break or get sort of a little bit leaky, as it suggests here. So it's just an observation, but a suggestion as well.
But actually, I think that's the point. If we look at the Orchard Centre, it's exactly the same issue. It's the fact that we've got a few sites where we've got boilers where this is going to be, and we've got to look at how we budget into the future and plan properly.
I think just the other issue around how environments work, if you like. I mean, it's to try and get some clarity around if we're moving a budget from vehicle leasing into the website. It clearly will show in the accounts, and there's a transparency there. But it's how do we? Is this the right way to go? And I appreciate we need to spend. If we need to spend the money, we've got to find the money somewhere. So it's just about whether it's environment from one to another is the appropriate way to do it, or we pull it from reserves and deal with it at the end of the year. So I think we need to get some clarity on that. For now, I think ultimately we've got to make a decision what to do on these items, haven't we? But it's a wider conversation about how we move forward, I think.
Councillor Foster, just to preempt you slightly, I met with Mr. Youngs earlier today. We did have a discussion over environments and the way of dealing with it. We can't alter that for this year, but I have put forward certain suggestions which we had a little debate, and I think we understood where we were coming from, but to make it a little bit more transparent. And I do not like this varmint from one thing to the other. And I think from what was described to me by Mr. Youngs as to how it's worked in the accounts, I don't think it is particularly clear to anyone who, other than an accountant, I hasten to add, about how it's done. So I think there are ways it can be done and improved. And I think that we may have come to a kind of possible solution for the next year. But this year, we're stuck with the process that it is. I personally don't feel comfortable with it because I think it's clouding the issue. And I would like to use varmints effectively from general reserve, and it would balance itself out at the end of the year. And we would have projected outturns for as things change. So we would see where we were over budget. As it is, I think it hides some of these changes. So I have actually addressed the issue with Mr. Youngs, and I hope we'll get a better solution for next year's budgeting.
It sounds as though it was a very interesting conversation, Councillor Strong.
Russell.
I'm not sure quite where we are with this, but the recommendation is for members to approve both the Orchard Centre boiler and the council website. But that means that implicitly we're approving the purchase of the Orchard Centre boiler at 3,500, and we've had reservations of two kinds expressed by colleagues. So I don't think we can approve that varmint. I'd be prepared to propose that we approve the website varmint, but not the other one.
Could I suggest that we take them separately so that we deal with them? And perhaps, may I suggest that we've had a good debate on the Orchard Centre boiler. I've noted the proposals there. So could I have a proposal just relating to the Orchard Centre boiler as to how we proceed on that one, please? Councillor Russell.
I'd say that we defer it until we have more information about the other proposals, the other, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, that have been proposed. Thank you. And that we wait for a further meeting to think about that.
Do you wish that to come back to this committee, or do you want it to go to council? Because the next committee.
I think it would be as well to go to council rather than to delay it too long.
That was my view. So we've had a proposal that we defer the decision on the Orchard Centre boiler, and that it be report go to council on the most appropriate way forward. Is that seconded? That's seconded. Any further comment on the boiler? All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Well, I think I've already made a proposal that we approve the varmint for the website.
Thank you, members. Actually, I'm not sure, but wait a minute. That's right. We're all right. That's item B. Now, items for information. 10A, original estimate planning cycle. I think Mr. Youngs, we were being asked to note this. Have members got any comments on it, or do they? Councillor Russell.
Well, I note that on the tabulation with it, we haven't got listed the F&GP meeting on the 16th of January when we actually make the recommendation to council. It would be far too long a gap between the 28th of November, which is now the 5th of December, by the way. It's not the 28th of November, it's the 5th of December, but it's a long gap between that and setting the precept on the 23rd of January. And I'm not sure that by the 5th of December, we would have all the necessary information from Central Bedfordshire about the number of properties and therefore the size of the possible precept. So I think we need to put in the fact that it's the 5th of December and that we've got an F&GP on the 16th of January when we get the final figures.
Yes, agree and noted.
So Subject to those comments, any further observations on that, or do Councillor Foster?
I'd just like to say it's good to see that we've got a plan. It's good to see that there's things in hand, so that there's for members and for officers, and a timeline for consideration. I think that's important, and it gives members confidence that we know we've got a sort of quite a detailed budget and so a lot of work to do this year in particular. So I think it's important, and it's good to see that we've got the plans there.
Chair. Just a comment. It's just I was going to pick up this point that Councillor Foster mentioned earlier on about the movement of vehemence and things like that. But I do believe that we've got the opportunity to do this line by line of the P&L side of the budget. So we can have a look at the amounts that are actually in there now, whether they've been used or not, and don't just move them across into next year. If you look at 2023 and 24 type of things, it looks as if the number just gets moved across. I think we've got the opportunity for the officers to spend a little bit more time looking at the detail of those things, so we don't end up with pockets of money that we then look at and say, oh, we've got plenty to move across in vehemence. I'd much rather have the start of the financial year with a better feel that the money is in the right pockets.
Yes, I think I note your comments. I think we're all very conscious of that. I'm conscious that I need to go and have a look at the budgets myself, and I'm arranging to see Mr. Young's to try and go through things and get a better understanding myself before we get to the budget process. But this is one of the historical things with local government. These are procedures that have been ingrained in practice, but aren't necessarily good practice. So thank you for your observations. Councillor. I think that was an observation rather than a decision. Thank you for that. Mr. Young, you've got wanted a further comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that the finance team, we have accounts analysis of every single accounts code. So all the information is there, and we'll be delighted to share that with whoever would like to come and spend a fascinating few hours going through each code. The information is all there. We're having manager meetings as well, just to see what's likely to change, and then we're going to be sharing that, I think, with you on the 31st of October.
And just as a further bit of information for the newer members, we have recently had a big change in the structure of the finance team and how we're working. And I think this is virtually the first year, or the next year's budget will be the first year that it'll be entirely town council led, rather than having an external accountant dealing with it. And I think that we took the decision to move away from the external to bringing in people internally, which had an impact on our budgeting costs internally and salaries, but it should make for a more efficient working system and a more flexible one, I think, because we will have the direct access to the people doing the donkey work, rather than having the donkey work done outside, and then we've got to play around with what they've done. So hopefully next year's process will be more effective. Any further comments, members, or have I said too much already? All right, processed in July and August. We have already made some observations about the environment process.
Chairman, I think there was the finance review update.
Sorry, a minute. 20. Sorry, I'm moving too quickly. Finance review update. You've got part complete recommendations detailed there, and just a recommendation that we note the report. Comments, please.
I move we note the report.
Is there any further comment? Remove. Everybody happy to approve that? Right, that's noted. And we noted I think we noted the original estimate planning cycle as well, subject to those observations. Right. Slowing down slightly so we get the right one. Environments processed in July and August. You've got the report there, and I think we've already commented in the difficulties with the environment process already. Any comments further, please? Councillor Russell.
Just that I'm concerned that there seems to be an awful lot of money being taken from the Christmas lights budget. So do we know at the moment what we need for the Christmas lights? Because has TCM gone through all of this? Because it doesn't seem right to me to take everything from one budget, especially just as we're coming to the time of year when we might know exactly what we want or need to spend.
Thank you, Mr. Youngs. And has the chairman of TCM been consulted on these environments?
I am in discussions with the place shaping manager. He realised that he requested, I think, about 18,000, which actually was a mirror. And going back to the point made earlier, that it was a mirror of last year's budget, which was actually the capital outlay of the Christmas lights, which simply won't be needed this year. So therefore, there's quite a bit of money there that we can use for other areas that need it.
I think that I would hope that the town centre management committee chairman has actually been advised of these, because it affects his overall budgeting. So I hope that's been done. But thank you for that comment, Councillor Russell.
I was just going to say, it's surely down to town centre management to decide whether or how they want to spend their budget and what exactly is going to happen with the light switch on and the light display over the Christmas period. So I think it's a bit premature to take too much from their budget.
Mr. Youngs.
I mean, those discussions have already taken place, and the place shaping manager has come back with a list of his requirements for this year of what he thinks the expenditure needs to be, which is left a certain amount.
If I may, I think the question is, it's the town centre chairman of the town centre management committee needs to be consulted on this, because it is his budget. We'll oversee the budget, but I think it's important that not only the town centre management chairman gets consulted, but in the case of PLOS, they get consulted, and indeed the chairman of personnel on their budgets. And I don't think we should be, as a committee, necessarily just dealing with environments on this basis. So perhaps that could be taken on board if members are satisfied with that suggestion. Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
I think we also agreed that any changes to PWLB would come to the council as well. So the last couple should go to council, not just the committees. 6 and 7.
Sorry, that amount has already been agreed, and the process was agreed that as the spend was needed, that we take it from that amount that was available. So it's literally just taking it from the amount that's already there and putting it into the particular cost centres.
An observation I would make is it's all very well seeing these figures on the paper here, but it doesn't. I have got no idea how it actually reflects and alters the budgeting process on this, which I think comes back in part to what we were discussing earlier about environments. Whilst we may have to do these various things, I think that there does need to be more consideration and consultation given with appropriate committees before we start approving everything to go across. But it seems to be that this has effectively been done already in practical terms. So I think if the comments that members have been made could be noted and considered by officers, and if to come back with a way of considering it. And in particular, I would like to hear the comments of the chairman of the Town Centre Management Committee on the violence, and he's happy with what's occurred. Members, any further thoughts or comments? Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I'm happy that these are required, and I think it's just the fact that it's a process that we're going through at the moment. I think we trust the officers, of course. So it's just a case of making sure that members are happy, really. Mr. Youngs.
Just to make a very important point, these have already been agreed at Town Council.
And what I mean by that is, so it's already happened. So but going forward, if officers feel it's the right thing, as long as it's in consultation with the chairs of the committees, and we're happy with that.
Thomas.
I think what Mr. Youngs is saying is we've already, as he said, we've already agreed it, and we're having to note the report rather than.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
I just think it comes back to the fact that the whole violence thing is very confusing, and I don't think we should be dealing with it like this in future years. We can't see where the budgets are and where the problems are clearly. I'm not saying that anything's been done wrongly in accounting terms, but I don't think it's the right way to be presenting it to councillors. It makes it much more difficult to follow what's going on.
May I suggest we note that, and you can rest assured that I'm trying to get an understanding of how we can do this, so that working with the finance team and Mr. Young, so that we can actually make the presentation easier and more easily understood, not only by councillors, but by the members of the public when they're looking at our accounts, because there are lots of things at the moment I find aren't as clear as I would expect. You can work it out, but it takes a bit of understanding of what's going on. So would members agree that we note the report, but could the observations of members also be included in the observations on this meeting? Thank you. Everybody's happy with that? All right, if that's noted, thank you. You've got that before you. We're being asked to note the report on the mitigations set there. Members, your comments, please. Councillor Russell.
I think with item 1, the play area equipment, we're coming back to the same thing as the public realm vehicles and maybe other aspects of the town council's finance, like our properties, the Orchard Centre and the town hall. We need to be much better at predicting when things are going to need replacing and have budgets set aside for it. And we do the regular inspections of the play equipment, so we know roughly where the problems are likely to be, how old the equipment is, whether it needs pure maintenance or whether at some point in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it's going to need replacing, because we don't want to have to keep coming back to these big refurbishment projects that we've got on at the moment.
Thank you for that. I think hopefully the Capital Assets Working Group is in part looking at that side of it. And I think the observations, we've made a number of observations today about how we look ahead and plan forward and plan for the natural depreciation of assets. So I think that, again, I think that with the benefit of an in-house team on the finance side, I would like to think it will be easier to get a real grip of it rather than having been done from external people who do not know the town. Councillor Barrett.
Just a request again that on the report there's some inconsistencies around dates when a risk has been mitigated or to be mitigated. It would be just nice to have consistency around those sorts of things, that we know that a risk has been resolved or it's been mitigated, i.e. it's still a risk, but it's green. So I appreciate the colours and things are there, but just some consistency around it, please.
Thank you. I'm sure Sean and Mr. Youngs and the officers will take that on board. Any further comments on the mitigated risks and the proposals there?
Move that we note it.
Is that seconded? Any further comments? In that case, is everybody wish to note it? That's agreed, we note it. Members of the public online or anything? And right. Oh, apologies to Councillor Skilton for having omitted him. Councillor Thomas.
Can I just mention that I don't think Councillor Skilton could either speak or hear anybody. So we've got a problem at the other end again.
Yes, I think there are some communication issues in this building at the moment.
It needs sorting out the next time, but I mean, there's been a few things.
Well, this isn't the first meeting I've been in this week where we've had difficulties with communications externally. Okay. So I hope that officers will note that on an informal basis, that there is a communication issue within the building. Right, so there's no members of the public, there are no exempt items. May I call this meeting to a close and thank you very much for your time and consideration this evening.